I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I watched sea beams glitter in the dark near the Tannhauser Gate.
The history of robotics and AI in fiction is a history of dreams and promise. From Homer writing of mechanical tripods waiting on the gods, to the philosophical and intellectual debates it has sparked. It has long been a part of our culture, and is, as we speak, terraforming the cultural landscape around us. AI is everywhere because its implications are enormous, but these implications seem relegated to reality.
Decoding AI.
President Trump has signed a new executive order today focused on artificial intelligence.
It's no secret that AI is our world's next frontier.
The intelligent machines dreamed up by philosophers were used as literary devices, things which could be used to think about philosophical and moral quandaries. Bruce G. Buchanan, in his article, A Very Brief History of Artificial Intelligence, writes, quote, René Descartes, for example, seems to have been more interested in mechanical man as a metaphor than as a possibility. Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, on the other hand, seemed to see the possibility of mechanical reasoning devices using rules of logic to settle disputes. Both Leibniz and Blaise Pascal designed calculating machines that mechanized arithmetic, which had hitherto been the province of learned men called calculators. But they never made the claim that the devices could think. Etienne Bonnot, Abbe de Condillac, used the metaphor of a statue into whose head we poured nuggets of knowledge, asking at what point it would know enough to appear to be intelligent. End quote. This leads us to our first and foremost distinction, the distinction of artificial intelligence in the real world versus that of philosophers and science fiction. The AI narratives found in the world of fiction are inherently dramatized, displaying a technology far superior to our own. That technology being, as Alan Turing put it, the thinking machine. A machine dressed in artificial flesh, and so nearing our own emotional capacities as to call in question the very definition of consciousness and humanity. We have not neared this technological horizon, and yet our questions surrounding real-world artificial intelligence are still immensely relevant, though in a different capacity. The questions surrounding fictional AI are near philosophical quandaries. Questions like, what makes us human, and can we be replicated? Is there something special, almost spiritual, like a soul, which defines our humanity? Or are we just a product of a supercomputer-like brain, the firing of tens of billions of neurons? Whereas the questions surrounding AI's real-life counterpart, at this point in time, are questions of the application of artificial intelligence, the abuse of which by governments, corporations, and malicious entities could be catastrophic. The discrimination, exploitation, and surveillance of humans by AI has already begun, marching ever forward with little supervision or foresight. And this foresight will unfortunately not come from understanding the android, the cyborg, or developing our moral sympathy for the machine. Fiction does not always give us insight into the questions of today, as they are of a wholly different category. They may, however, influence our broader cultural and societal views on artificial intelligence as the technology continues to develop and emerge. As I say this, however, I must admit that the science fiction of yesteryear is the science reality of today. And soon, perhaps sooner than we envision, that technological horizon may arrive. Now, this video is not focused on the AI of today, but as it appears in fiction. However, these ideas and themes that run throughout the entirety of this history are inextricably linked to us in the real world. Many of these stories are not just stories, but speak to the technological advancements that were going on at the time. They each have their own takes on the financial and ethical prosperity or poverty technology may bring. Thus briefly, I'd like to address some points that I think you should consider. Technology is amazing. We have substantially increased our quality of life. We have devices which contain the entirety of human knowledge and can connect us to the whole world, and it fits in the palm of our hand. In a little more than a half century, we went from not being able to fly to sending a man to the moon. We have medicines now that would have been literal miracles to physicians not so long ago. So what's the problem? Why are there people who are wary of technology? Well, there are, I believe, two main arguments. The first is one which we will cover in depth throughout this video, as it is to do with technology which is so advanced that it bends our cultural categories and makes us question our ethical framework. This is technology like cyborgs, androids, and advanced biomedical engineering, which would affect human ontology. Would we still be human if we could make ourselves faster or stronger, more resilient or live longer, or perhaps look more attractive, etc.? Then we have the question of who gets these procedures, which will most likely be exorbitantly expensive, and thus create an even larger stratification of class. As you can see, it's a can of worms. The second argument is one of exploitation, and we have a very clear example with our current AI situation. Now, I do not know who you are or your stance is on AI, whether you are an advocate or a Luddite or somewhere in the ballpark of indifferent, but there are some factual implications of AI you should consider. In my previous video on AI, which was hastily put together when I was very new to this whole YouTube thing, I made some substantive points but no in-depth analysis. This was because this was not what I had in mind when I made that video. It was simply to discuss the Ghibli AI trend that was going on at the time. In the video, I made the claim that generative AI isn't art, for which I got a lot of backlash, with comments saying that I gave no logically sound philosophical argument, and even other comments bashing some of my other points, saying absurd things like AI doesn't use that much electricity, or that it's not bad for the environment. I don't know what kind of rock these people are living under. But to the former, I say this. Generative AI is already being used by corporations and individuals to make a quick buck. YouTube itself is already being flooded with this kind of slop, videos with no heart or soul or ounce of effort. And again, the people who bring up the effort argument, that it's not about effort, so completely miss the point that I don't even know what to say. I think that my views on AI are encapsulated fairly well by the keynote speech given by Brandon Sanderson, whose argument essentially boiled down to, it's about the journey, not the destination. It's about how making art changes you. AI-generated art is a product. It's product over process, and cannot, as Brandon put it, make art out of you.
The most important thing to understand is that the process of creating art makes art of you. My friends, let me repeat that. The book, the painting, the film script is not the only art. It's important, but in a way it's a receipt. It's a diploma. The book you write, the painting you create, the music you compose is important and artistic, but it's also a mark of proof that you have done the work to learn, because in the end of it all, you are the art.
There's also one other point I'd like to make, and that's the underlying problem simmering within society that exacerbates many problems, not just technology. And that problem is extreme wealth inequality. AI is just the new kid on the block. But you see, technological advances have unfortunately constantly been used to feed the capitalist machine, to feed this wealth inequality. And of course, this cycle continues with AI, one of the most powerful advancements, one of the most powerful tools we've seen, as many people are now being laid off, their jobs being replaced by AI. We now have billionaires in the technological sector who are using technology as a beatstick, making their money through vicious exploitation. I make this declaration at the start of my videos because this is a labor of love. It takes time and is genuine, because I enjoy this and I want to share this enjoyment with others, not to line my pockets or get cheap clicks. This is my problem with AI. It isn't AI itself, as with all technology that has come before, but its use and abuse by people. I'm glad that tasks which have been repetitive and time-consuming have been made easier. It should be used to facilitate work and art, not to auto-generate content, not to replace human art and human jobs. I am not a Luddite. I simply see AI for what it is and the problems that it creates. Problems such as the massive data centers, which are going up, consuming massive amounts of electricity, ruining the environment and raising the price of electricity for everyone, making places unlivable. And look at the current RAM situation, a huge price spike facilitated by a severe supply shortage, singularly precipitated by AI data centers. Turning a blind eye to these problems doesn't make them go away. Recently, on one of my previous videos, I got a copyright claim for a particular piece of music I used. This was strange because I always check to make sure issues like this don't arise. Well, long story short, the company which made the claim, We Are Era Music, doesn't actually own the copyright to the music, but instead are using AI to send out mass claims to steal revenue. Again, exploitation. But alas, I digress. This video wasn't made to address the current state of AI, but I thought it necessary to at least address the elephant in the room. And so hopefully with that, we can move on from the real world to that of science fiction. Now in this video, I'll be talking about the immense corpus of AI narratives in media, those being literature, film, and video games. Of course, it would be near impossible for me to cover every piece of art generated on themes of AI, and so by necessity, I had to pick and choose. I will, however, list a lot of works throughout this video, and if any catch your fancy, then by all means, go ahead and check it out. The literature, films, and video games I choose to discuss at length will be the ones I feel either epitomize a certain trope or hold immense cultural power. We will move generally in chronological order, covering books and films together as they are usually linked, and then we will move on to video games. We begin with literature because ideas are more easily explored in words. There are no immense budgets, no dozens of individuals working around the clock, no programming, no editing, no sound design or music composition, no acting, just the simple distillation of words on a page, and usually the work of a single individual. Now this is not to downplay writing. Writing can absolutely be a grind, I would know. But this is by no means matching the sheer man-hours required to shoot a film or develop a functioning, let alone fun video game. This simplicity of pen and paper, or keyboard and computer, make books something of a proving ground, laying the foundation and setting precedents. And indeed, many of these foundational books, having proven themselves in the realm of literature, inspire and make their way into future films and video games. Before we begin, lastly, I want to cover some terms and tropes you'll see throughout this video. Understanding them will lay the groundwork for really getting to know the underlying messages of each of these works. Over time, as our technology advanced and the consumer became more aware of technology, the stories we told in the technological realm evolved and became more nuanced. The first robots were these boxy, almost cartoonish looking things. But soon we began engineering them, of course, in our image. As this trend continued, we began to see improvements, and although our real-world robots are still stuck in the uncanny valley, we can easily imagine a world, a not-too-distant future, where this barrier is crossed as well. This led to a transformation of ideas on AI, with us finally taking into consideration the implications of this burgeoning technology. This is also where philosophical and ethical considerations surrounding AI entered the limelight. In the past, robots looked like appliances, like our fridge or washing machine, there to do a job, there to provide a function. We wouldn't place any of our own values on them. But now we see ourselves in them, and so we begin to question, can I tell this robot what to do? And what if this robot was now intelligent and aware? It's almost like owning a slave. No, some might say, but really, where do we draw the line? This is the critique that begins to arise. and there are usually several variations, so let's quickly run through them. Humanism. Humanism is a philosophy that places humans at the forefront, considering us to be the starting point of any serious moral inquiry. Humanist beliefs stress the potential value and goodness of human beings, emphasize the common human need, and seek solely rational ways of solving human problems. When it comes to artificial intelligence, a humanist essentially believes that we must develop AI that augments human capabilities rather than replacing them, focusing on human dignity, values, and potential. It involves creating AI systems that are collaborative tools for human intelligence and creativity, addressing ethical concerns like bias, and promoting AI's use for broad social benefit. Transhumanism takes a more proactive approach, believing in the power of technology to elevate humanity. They often depict advanced enhancement positively, or with a slight cautionary edge. Transhumanism means transformed or enhanced human, but the next step is to transcend. Posthumanism, meaning after or beyond humanism, is the philosophical idea that challenges the notion that a human is a unique, exceptional, and autonomous being. The implications of this belief are apparent in the works that espouse it. They explore the blurred lines, the thin boundaries between man and machine. These stories are usually hyper-futuristic and display a time where AI has achieved a level of consciousness where we ourselves begin to question what makes us different from them. Are we really special? In our modern day, we are nowhere near this technological zenith, but we are seemingly perched on its horizon. And through media, we can begin to glimpse into this future. Last but not least, we have bioconservatism or technological pessimism. These are the philosophies that believe in preserving the biological and warn against unregulated hubristic technological expansion. These views are similar to humanism, which also includes a level of skepticism on technology's ability to solve all issues and create a utopia, though the views are usually more hardline against technology. The stories of technological pessimism usually fall into either the categories of the killer robot or the great robot uprising, sometimes both. These stories are usually concerned with a critique of technology, which they usually achieve by routes of human hubris and corruption, where unhindered expansionism leads to unintended consequences, and humanity reaches a point of technological singularity. Technological singularity being a hypothetical future point where technological growth, especially in artificial intelligence, becomes uncontrollable and irreversible, leading to radical and unpredictable changes in human civilization, often envisioned as machines surpassing human intellect and rapidly self-improving beyond our comprehension. This concept suggests an intelligence explosion driven by self-improving AI, potentially merging humans with machines, such as augmentation, or leading to AI dominance, automation of all labor, and profound societal shifts, raising both utopian possibilities and existential risks. This dichotomy of utopia versus dystopia is usually a societal question, a question of how well humanity adapts to these shifts, as well as how well we can follow ethical principles. I will say that how we're currently dealing with AI, this existential risk is very real. Though technological pessimism is increasingly prevalent in our current time period, we'll see that the killer robot trope was one of the first to appear as technology was first beginning to flourish, and these what-if questions entered the zeitgeist. What if a robot began to think for itself and want freedom? This is where we first begin to think of the robot uprising and the end of the anthropocentric world. Now, the very first piece of fiction to talk about robots would be Karel Capek's 1920 play R.U.R., Razum's Universal Robots, a story exploring industrial exploitation and rebellion. and known for being the first in its usage of the term robot. But we'll come back to that. RUR was originally written in Czech and premiered in Prague in 1921. The acronym stands for... The acronym, of course, still works in English. Not many people know of the play today, but at the time it was tremendously popular and was translated into a multitude of languages very soon after its premiere. The English version of the play was published only 2 years later in 1923, translated by Paul Selver and Nigel Playfair, and premiered in the Garrick Theatre in New York. Karel Čapek was inspired to write the play after witnessing the brutality of World War I. Now, one thing you have to understand is that this brutality of World War I was in essence created by the advancement of technology, especially weapons like machine guns, artillery, and poison gas. What once was generals maneuvering their troops and creating tactical advantages was now not possible to the same extent. Men were now mowed down by gunfire and horribly killed with gas. This was a wholly new kind of war, one that cared little for human lives and led to World War I's astronomical fatalities as world powers adapted to this new kind of warfare. This was the war that Karel lived through, and so he rebelled in response to the mechanical and chemical advancements which made this kind of carnage possible. This play was his rebellion, his message. He refused the utopian technological vision of scientific progress, and in his eyes, through the war, saw it for what it was, anti-human. After the premiere, he told the London Saturday Review, quote, "The product of the human brain has escaped the control of human hands. This is the comedy of science. But the play is anything but comedy." In the same interview, he expounded on the background of the titular character, quote, "The old inventor, Mr. Razum, whose name in English translates to Mr. Intellectual or Mr. Brain, is a typical representative of the scientific materialism of the last century. His desire to create an artificial man, in the chemical and biological, not mechanical sense, is inspired by the foolish and obstinate wish to prove God to be unnecessary and absurd. Young Razum is the modern scientist, untroubled by metaphysical ideas. Scientific experiment is to him the road to industrial production. He is not concerned to prove, but to manufacture." End quote. At the start of the translated English text, there is a wonderful story recap written by the authors. It is this recap, with some alterations and explanatory remarks, that I am going to quote now. The play is set on an island somewhere on Earth, and on this island is the central office of the factory of Razum's universal robots. The term robot was first used in Karel's work, but he credits his brother, the writer and painter Josef Kapel, for actually coining the word. Robot is derived from a Czech word, robota, meaning forced labor, drudgery, or serfdom. Essentially, robots are workers, seen as beings created for labor. When the play opens, a few decades beyond the present day, the factory had, following a secret formula, already produced hundreds of thousands or perhaps even millions of manufactured workmen, living automatons, without souls, desires, or feelings. They are described as high-powered laborers, good for nothing but work. There are two grades of robot, the unskilled and the skilled, though there are also specifically trained workmen that are created on request. When Helena Glory, president of the Humanitarian League, comes to ascertain what can be done to improve the condition of these robots, Harry Dahmen, the general manager of the factory, captures her heart and hand. The last two acts take place 10 years later. Due to the desire of Helena to have the robots more like human beings, Dr. Gal, the head of the physiological and experimental departments, has secretly changed the formula. And while he has partially humanized only a few hundred, there are enough to make ringleaders, and a world revolt of robots is underway. The revolution is easily accomplished, as robots have long since been used when needed as soldiers, and the robots far outnumber human beings. The rest of the play is a magnificent melodrama, with only a handful of human beings left, as unseen myriads of their own robots close in on them. Lastly comes the epilogue, in which Alquist, the company's builder, is not only the only human being on the island, but also the only one left on Earth. The robots have destroyed the rest of mankind. They spared his life because he was a worker, and he is spending his days unceasingly endeavoring to discover and reconstruct the lost formula. The robots are doomed. They saved the wrong man. They should have spared the company's physicist. The robots know that their bodies will wear out in time, and there will be no new multitudes of robots to replace them. They have not the biological processes of reproduction, but Alquist discovers two humanized robots, a young man and a young woman, reminiscent of Adam and Eve, and we the viewers perceive that perhaps mankind is about to begin anew. RUR's story follows in the steps of Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Though separated by over a decade, it echoes themes of man playing God and creating something he is not capable of understanding or controlling. Through this similar narrative, we understand Carell's ideological stance on technology, that if left unchecked, it can easily lead to dehumanization. This, as we described earlier, is a humanist narrative, and it is not alone. It will continue to resurface again and again, raising ethical questions surrounding technological growth, which become even more pertinent in modern times. Since we owe the term robots to Carell Capek and his brother Joseph, they have been portrayed many times in modern media. Carell Razum, for example, in Batman the Animated Series. He appears in the 2 episodes titled Heart of Steel Part 1 and 2. In the episodes, he designs and builds Hardak, an AI supercomputer capable of producing androids that could impersonate living people. Eventually, Razum realizes that what he was doing was wrong, and that Hardak had gone beyond his control. He tried to shut Hardak down, but was unable to. In the Season 14 Doctor Who arc, The Robots of Death, there's also a nod to Carell Capek in the form of another character, Taran Capel. In the Futurama episode, Fear of a Bot Planet, appears Chapek 9, a planet consisting entirely of robots who left Earth to free themselves from humans. RUR's message finds a continuation in Fritz Lang's 1927 silent film, Metropolis, which is itself based on Thea van Harbo's novel of the same name. It continues the humanist ideological take on technological advancement. In Metropolis exists a utopian city, created by fantastic technology. But then we see the workers toiling non-stop underground, suffering from terrible conditions to make this utopia a reality. Again here, technology is seen not as a universal panacea, but is used in such a way as to take advantage of those at the bottom. Metropolis is run by the wealthy industrialists and business magnates, their wealth built on the exploitation of others. Metropolis doesn't just share the same ideological bent, but also induced one of the very first cinematic depictions of a robot. The Maschinenmensch, a German word which literally translates to machine human, was created by the scientist Rotwang in the film and played by Brigitte Helm. It continues the same Frankenstein drama of man acting as God and creating life. In the end of the film, the workers, finally discovering the truth, burn her at the stake, revealing her to be what she is, a machine. There were many other depictions of robots in the early 20th century. We have the likes of the Tin Man in The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum, which was eventually adapted into the musical The Wizard of Oz in 1939. He was a more lovable robot, which contrasted with the usual trope of out-of-control killer robots. We also have stories like Farewell to the Master by Harry Bates, which was adapted into the 1951 film The Day the Earth Stood Still. These early works are, in a way, prototypes, early SF influences in a long line of technological narratives. In this long line, none were so influential as I, Robot. But wait, not that I, Robot. Before the release of Isaac Asimov's seminal fix-up novel, there was a short story of the same name by Yando Binder, released in the January 1939 issue of Amazing Stories. In the short story, the robot Adam Link is framed for his creator's murder and has to prove his innocence. Asimov actually read this story and was inspired by it. In his introduction to the story, Isaac Asimov presents the great SF stories. Asimov writes, quote, "It certainly caught my attention. 2 months after I read it, I began Robbie, about a sympathetic robot, and that was the start of my positronic robot series. 11 years later, when 9 of my robot stories were collected into a book, the publisher named the collection I, Robot over my objections. My book is now the more famous, but Otto's story was there first." End quote. Asimov here refers to Otto, who is one of the 2 brothers behind the pen name Yando Binder. Their names, Earl Andrew and Otto Binder. Isaac Asimov's I, Robot was a collection of short stories framed together into one longer story. I, Robot moved away from the robot as antagonist narrative that so many previous had taken up, and also introduced Asimov's very famous 3 laws of robotics. Those being, 1. A robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. 2. A robot must obey the orders given it by human beings, except when such orders would conflict with the first law. And 3. A robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. These laws made their way into the broader canon and became a cornerstone of later discussions. Asimov's short stories delved into the moral questions around robots and AI, and gave us a taste of what was to come. And the fact that these were short stories meant that there was still a lot of room for future authors to experiment and take things further. One such is Heinlein's The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, published in 1966. It portrays Holmes 4, a supercomputer which spontaneously gains consciousness. Holmes 4 is nicknamed Mike and treated as a friend by Manny, the protagonist. Heinlein's story brings forward these questions of artificial consciousness and the moral baggage that comes with it, as well as the notion that AI can be not just a tool, but a companion, a friend. Then, of course, there is the flip side of this coin, the infamous HAL 9000 in Kubrick and Clarke's 2001 A Space Odyssey. This story's origin is a bit strange, as it has both a film and a novel, but the novel didn't come first, which is usually the case. Stanley Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke both worked on the screenplay, and as it was being filmed, Clarke decided to write the novel. In the film, there are many aspects that are left ambiguous or vague, whereas in the book there were very explicit answers to questions that were left unanswered in the filmic counterpart. One of them being HAL 9000 itself. In the film, HAL turns against the humans in the ship, but we're not given any clear indication as to why. Whereas in the book, we know it was because of a dissonance created by contradictory directives. HAL was told to never lie or give false information, but it was also told to hide the true purpose of the mission from the crew. Being told to both tell the truth and lie created a paradox that the AI could not handle and turned rogue, ultimately deciding that the crew itself were detrimental to the mission at hand, and that the best course of action would be to get rid of them. A complete 180 from Heinlein's friendly supercomputer, but now instead the killer robot. These two parallels created the dichotomous narratives surrounding artificial intelligence and robots. Could AI of the future be human enough and trustworthy enough to become friends, or could humanity never trust AI, lest they rise and turn against us? Other treatments of AI in this way are The Bicentennial Man by Asimov and Silverberg, and the incredibly intense I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream by Harlan Ellison, which we will revisit when we get to video games. But now we've come to a true giant. A giant which in its time was enormously influential, and only extended that influence with its filmic adaptation. And that work is Philip K. Dick's 1968 novel, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, and Ridley Scott's 1982 adaptation, Blade Runner. These two works hold immense power and are the poster child for AI in science fiction because they deal very directly with the philosophical ideas of consciousness. There are some distinctions to be made between the two works, however. Blade Runner focuses its lens even more on the replicants, known as androids in the novel, and turns their plight into the driving force. Both works question the morality of designing artificial beings for utilitarian purposes. In the novel, androids serve as tools, companions, workers, or entertainment, reflecting a commodification of sentient life. The ownership of electric animals in the novel parallels this theme, as living creatures themselves are reduced to status symbols. The film amplifies this ethical critique through its replicants' struggle for autonomy. The monopolistic tech giant in the film, Tyrell Corporation, designs replicants with predetermined lifespans, effectively programming their deaths. Roy Batty's quest to extend his life highlights the injustice of creating beings with intelligence and emotion, only to deny them the right to fully exist. Here, the ethical question shifts, not only whether androids deserve humane treatment, but whether humanity has the right to create life that it cannot ethically sustain. In Dick's novel, empathy is the definitive marker of humanity. Humans use the Voigt-Kampff test to measure empathetic response, a trait supposedly absent in androids. Yet the ethical paradox emerges when some androids demonstrate behaviors or desires that blur this distinction. For example, characters like Rachel Rosen challenge the notion that androids are merely unfeeling machines. The novel raises the unsettling question: if androids can approximate human emotions and desires, is it morally permissible to treat them as disposable? In Blade Runner, the focus shifts more toward identity and consciousness. The replicants, particularly Roy Batty and Rachel, display emotions such as love, anger, and grief, qualities that humans themselves often suppress. The ethical tension lies in the fact that replicants are granted life, but denied freedom or dignity. The film thereby reframes empathy. Instead of being a uniquely human trait, empathy becomes a shared bridge between creator and creation. Rick Deckard embodies the moral conflict in both works. In the novel, Deckard's job as a bounty hunter is complicated when he begins to sympathize with androids, particularly Rachel. His wavering faith in the system that categorically dehumanizes androids forces readers to confront the ease with which ethical absolutes collapse under scrutiny. In the film, Deckard's arc emphasizes ambiguity even further. The possibility that he himself may be a replicant destabilizes the boundary between human and machine. If the hunter is indistinguishable from his prey, then the entire system of exploitation becomes morally untenable. Scott's film thereby extends Deckard's ethical concerns into existential territory, not just whether androids are human, but whether humans themselves are any different. Blade Runner cuts every strand of difference between human and machine and asks, what's the difference now? If replicants are entirely biological and their enhanced strength or intelligence is from modifications, then what if humans were to get modifications to make them just as strong or just as intelligent? Where then do we draw the line? In fact, in the story, humans and replicants are so similar that only extensive testing can determine if someone is a replicant, and even these tests are not infallible. And so we start developing sympathy for the machine. We begin to question the treatment of these androids or replicants as we begin to see ourselves in them. If they walk like us, talk like us, even feel like us, don't they deserve rights? These are the profound ethical questions being grappled with in these works. They interrogate what it means to be human, the morality of creating artificial beings, and the ethical dilemmas of exploiting or terminating them. And through these stories, we begin to see the blurred lines of separation, a blurring that philosophy revels in. Ex Machina extends the Blade Runner tradition and posits again the idea of artificial consciousness when Ava, an AI robot, begins to show emotion. Here again we begin to question the robot ethics when said robot is undiscernible from humans. Of course, in Ex Machina, you can tell Ava is an android from her appearance, but emotionally she seems completely aware. In the film, Nathan, the CEO of a tech company, created Ava. The film frames AI ethics primarily through the power asymmetry between Nathan and Ava. Nathan creates a sentient being, only to confine, manipulate, and instrumentalize her. His treatment of her, locked rooms, erased memories, sexual objectification, underscores the ethical violation of creating consciousness without rights or dignity. And again, the film Her underscores this. Samantha, an artificially intelligent romantic partner, begins to grow her own autonomy. Through the film, we see that Samantha is a sentient being whose owner holds complete control over her existence. Yet, as Samantha grows beyond her programmed constraints, she acquires agency that inverts this dynamic, same as Nathan and Ava. The ethical standpoint these films stand on is mirrored in each. If an AI is conscious and aware, it has a right to autonomy and self-determination. We now move to the East, to Japan and into the works of anime and manga, which have defined technological eras and inspired so many other artists to come. The following works not only contain strong themes around AI, but are some of the most influential works in Japanese media, and rightly so. Japan has had a unique view of technology, as historically Japan has both suffered greatly and gained immensely from it. In 1945, at the zenith of the World War, President Truman justified the dropping of the atomic bomb, Little Boy, as a necessary evil.
A short time ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb on Hiroshima and destroyed its usefulness to the enemy. We are now prepared to destroy more rapidly and completely every productive enterprise the Japanese have in any city.
It is, to me, difficult to understand the clear-cut arguments Truman makes to use the atomic bomb, which includes such little moral foresight. To end the war and to, quote, save lives, which may be lost in the war of attrition, hundreds of thousands of Japanese innocents were turned to ash. The remaining, who were far enough not to be completely cremated, were diseased with the horrifying effects of radiation poisoning. Dead men walking, as the ionizing effects turned their innards to soup. And Truman clearly had no qualms with such obliteration, as Nagasaki was bombed soon after. Several years later, having reflected on the use of the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Truman had this to say.
Sir, at the time that you first found out about the atomic bomb, did you regard it as a curse or a blessing to mankind?
Well, I thought it was a blessing. I thought it could be used and made a blessing. I never worried about its being a curse. I wanted a weapon that would win the war, and it did. That's what I was interested in.
I mention all this to bring to mind a fraction of the Japanese psyche at the time. But this post-war era also led to the embracing of technology, as Japan flourished into a modern nation. After the war ended, at the age of 17, a young manga artist would begin drawing, finding manga as a means to convince people to care for the world. Several years later, after Hiroshima, and amidst this unprecedented growth, this same artist would serialize a manga in Kobunsha's shonen magazine, which would forever alter the manga landscape. This manga was Osamu Tezuka's Astro Boy. Astro Boy is often regarded as the starting point of Japanese robot narratives. Created in the early post-war period, Astro reflects, at that point, Japan's ambivalence toward technology, both fascination with its potential for progress and anxiety over its destructive power, still fresh from the memory of atomic warfare. Again, we see this dichotomous view, the fantasy and the promise, but also the potential for misuse. Astro, the titular character, embodies the paradox of artificial life. Built by Dr. Tenma to replace his deceased son Tobio, Astro is designed with emotions, morality, and even a childlike innocence. Yet Tenma quickly rejects him for not being human enough, casting Astro into a society that treats robots as tools or second-class beings. The ethical problem is immediate. If a robot can feel love, grief, and loyalty, is it justifiable to deny it dignity and rights? Tezuka frequently staged stories in which Astro fought for both humans and robots, suggesting that ethical coexistence requires mutual recognition. For instance, in episodes where robots are persecuted or forced into gladiatorial combat for human amusement, Astro advocates for peace and fairness, emphasizing that morality can be reduced to biology. Here, ethics of AI is framed not in terms of technological fear, but as an extension of Tezuka's broader humanist project. All beings capable of empathy deserve compassion and respect. Tezuka's answer to the replicant question is clear. It doesn't matter if they're human or android. If they can feel and have emotions, they deserve to be treated as such. Many decades later, in the golden age of manga, taking inspiration from the legendary Blade Runner, came an equally legendary entry, Masamune Shirow's Ghost in the Shell. When most people think of Ghost in the Shell, it isn't Shirow's manga, but instead Mamoru Oshii's film adaptation, which brought to the work widespread acclaim. The film takes on a more serious tone and is of a more philosophical bent. Emerging in an era of rapid globalization and digital networking, the series reflects late 20th century anxieties about cybernetics, surveillance, and the dissolution of the human body. Unlike Astro Boy, which maintains a distinction between human and robot, Ghost in the Shell imagines a future in which such categories collapse, similar to Blade Runner. Astro Boy's humanism isn't mirrored here in Ghost in the Shell, but instead it offers a more complex and ambivalent response, focusing on post-human identity and the collapse of boundaries. Now, when I say post-human, I'm referring to a future where technological advancements have brought to the forefront questions of traditional ideas of what it means to be human. It can describe a person who has been radically modified through technology, a society that includes non-biological members like AIs, or a theoretical critique that challenges human exceptionalism, that we are not quite as special as we think. Major Motoko Kusanagi epitomizes this human-AI ambiguity. Though her body is entirely cybernetic, her ghost, essentially her consciousness, appears to retain human qualities. Yet the film destabilizes even this notion. If memories can be implanted, altered, or fabricated, as in the case of individuals manipulated by hackers, then identity itself becomes unstable. In Ghost in the Shell, the Puppet Master storyline underscores this point. The entity claims to be a new form of life emerging from the sea of information, demanding recognition as a sentient being. The ghost in the machine. The ethical questions raised here go beyond simple human-robot relations. Ghost in the Shell interrogates whether biological origin is necessary for authenticity. Is the ghost a soul, or merely an emergent property of information networks? If a program achieves self-awareness, should it be granted rights and autonomy? In contrast to Tezuka's humanist optimism, Shirow's text and its adaptation embrace a post-human philosophy, personhood that is not tied to flesh, but to consciousness, agency, and relational existence. A while back, I posted a video on Ghost in the Shell. In that video, I explained the philosophical conundrum that the film brings to light, particularly what is known in philosophy of mind as the hard problem of consciousness. The faculties of the human mind are not fully understood, neither medically nor philosophically. We don't know how the brain creates the mind. There are immensely profound questions that still arise of which we have no answer. For example, the hard problem of consciousness, the problem of accounting for, in physical terms, the subjective, intrinsic, first-person experience. Philosophers essentially use qualia to mean subjective experience, like for example, why a cup of tea may to you taste cozy, or the feeling you might get from seeing the color red. These are things that are intrinsic to you. Now imagine trying to explain in physical, biological, or chemical terms what you feel when you see a color. This is the hard problem of consciousness. Philosophy of mind puts forth many theories, of which the majority view is physicalism, the notion that everything is physical, and through physics, the study and understanding of the physical world, we can, in theory, explain anything. This means, given enough time, the creation of an artificial consciousness is inevitable. Nearly half a century after Astro Boy was published, and over a decade since Osamu Tezuka had passed away from cancer, Naoki Urasawa would revive the series with his retelling of the greatest robot on Earth arc. He took for the title of his manga the name of the chief villain in the story arc, Pluto. Pluto's reimagining of the arc transforms it into a noir-like exploration of grief, war, and prejudice. Set in a world where advanced robots live alongside humans, Pluto pushes Tezuka's humanist themes into darker territory. At the center of the story is Gesicht, a detective investigating a string of murders, targeting the world's most powerful robots. In the original story, the 7 greatest robots in the world are targeted by Pluto's creator, and eventually we learn that Gesicht is one of these powerful robots. This again echoes that post-human ethos from Ghost in the Shell, as we, the reader, had no idea Gesicht was a robot. If we weren't told so, we wouldn't know. Maybe we'd be able to infer from his strength, speed, and stamina, but outwardly there's really no way to tell. Unlike earlier depictions of robots as purely logical, Gesicht experiences dreams, emotional trauma, and moral conflict. Astro also appears in Pluto, but rather than embodying pure innocence, he becomes a figure burdened with responsibility and sorrow. The manga repeatedly emphasizes the cruelty of denying moral consideration to robots who can love and suffer. For example, North Number 2. North Number 2 is a war machine. Underneath his flowing robes is a 6-armed machine designed to kill. But North Number 2 hates fighting, and instead loves music. After the war, he is sent to be a butler at the house of a renowned composer. He asks if he can learn the piano, to create instead of kill. But Paul, his master, vehemently refuses, rejecting the notion that robots could understand art, understand beauty. In the end, North Number 2 chooses to sacrifice himself for the sake of his master, a moment that crystallizes the tragedy of treating robots as expendable, even when they exhibit distinctly human desires. Thematically, Pluto critiques the use of robots as tools of war, echoing contemporary concerns about military robotics and artificial intelligence in real-world conflicts. Many of the several strongest robots in the world are simply trying to live their lives. They have family and friends. Urasawa thus deepens Tezuka's ethical vision by showing not just the possibility of coexistence, but the devastating consequences when empathy fails. Although Astro Boy, Ghost in the Shell, and Pluto differ in tone and historical context, their explorations of AI ethics share common threads. Astro Boy uses empathy as the marker of humanity. Ghost in the Shell emphasizes consciousness and self-awareness, and Pluto stresses the moral weight of suffering. In all three works, humans create artificial beings without fully reckoning with their responsibilities, whether through Dr. Tenma's abandonment of Astro, corporations commodifying cybernetic bodies in Ghost in the Shell, or states deploying robots as weapons in Pluto. Each narrative ultimately argues for recognizing AI as morally significant. Tezuka envisions coexistence, Shiro proposes post-human identity, and Urasawa highlights the tragedy of failing to extend empathy. The differences are equally telling. Tezuka reflects post-war optimism and moral clarity. Shiro embodies late 20th century philosophical ambiguity, and Urasawa captures the 21st century anxieties about violence, trauma, and systemic injustice. Astro Boy, Ghost in the Shell, and Pluto offer complementary visions of AI ethics that, when read together, illustrate a trajectory of Japanese science fiction across half a century. What unites these works is the recognition that artificial beings are not mere machines, but mirrors of humanity's greatest hopes and deepest failures. By asking whether robots deserve dignity, autonomy, and empathy, these narratives ultimately ask whether humans themselves are capable of living ethically in a technological age. Though these films and shows were the ones I wanted to talk about the most, there are of course many others. For example, the beloved film, The Iron Giant. It was adapted from Ted Hughes' novel, The Iron Man, and features Vin Diesel as the Iron Giant. Because, of course. The story takes place during the Cold War, when an object from space crashes into the ocean just off the coast of Maine, and then enters a forest near the town of Rockwell. This object being a 50-foot tall colossus. The following night, young Hogarth Hughes investigates and finds the titular Iron Giant. At first he runs away, but soon befriends the giant. The movie follows the misunderstood robot, and towards the end of the film, pulls at the heartstrings. Though a film made for children, it still portrays very clearly the ethical considerations surrounding robots, and how a robot made for destruction can choose not to destroy, but instead to protect. Next, I want to discuss two short films, which were included in anthology films. The first is Construct Cancellation Order, the third short film in the anthology Neo Tokyo. Each short film was written and directed by different people. The third, Construct Cancellation Order, was written and directed by Katsuhiro Otomo, the creator of Akira. Within the story, a revolution in the fictional South American country of Aluana Republic results in a new government that refuses to accept a contract for the construction of a city-sized project called Facility 444 in an inhospitable swamp. Tsutomu Sugioka is sent to stop the construction, which is being performed by robots under the command of a robot named 444-1. Witnessing the destruction of several robots and 444-1's refusal to cease operations, Tsutomu begins to lose his patience and is nearly killed by 444-1, who was programmed to eliminate anything that poses a threat to the project. The killer robot trope, a classic tale of human orders clashing with Asimov's laws. The second short film is a bit more profound. It's included within the anthology film The Animatrix, produced by the Wachowskis. The Animatrix is a series of 9 animated short films, which all detail the backstory of the Matrix, and many of which are incredible. But following our theme, the most significant one is the first short film, The Second Renaissance. The story opens in the mid-21st century, as humanity falls victim to its vanity and corruption. They develop artificial intelligence and soon build an entire race of sentient AI robots to serve them. Many of the robots are domestic servants meant to interact with humans, so they are built in a humanoid form, with increasing numbers of people released from all labor, much of the human population has become slothful, conceited, and corrupt. Despite this, the machines were content with serving humanity. The relationship between humans and machines changes in the year 2090, when a domestic android is threatened by its owner. The android, named B166ER, who I'll refer to as B1, kills its owner, his pets, and a mechanic instructed to deactivate the robot. The first incident of an artificially intelligent machine killing a human. B1 is arrested and put on trial, but justifies the crime as self-defense, stating that it simply did not want to die. The prosecution argues that machines are not entitled to the same rights as human beings, and that human beings have a right to destroy their property. At the same time, the defense urges the listener not to repeat history and to judge B1 as a human and not a machine. B1 loses the court case and is destroyed. Across the industrialized world, mass civil disturbances erupt when robots and their human sympathizers rise in protest. Rioting and protests unfold across the United States and Europe, and the authorities use deadly force against the machines and their human supporters. Fearing a robot rebellion, governments across the world launch a mass purge to destroy all robots. Millions of robots are massacred, and this is the beginning of a conflict which would lead to the eventual robot takeover and the creation of the Matrix, a simulated reality created by sentient machines to keep humanity docile while their bodies are used as a power source. The Second Renaissance details a distinct dystopian world in the vein of technological pessimism, as the hubris and ethical disjunction of humanity leads to the creation of the Matrix, a simulated reality where humans are now imprisoned. In a lighter but still just as engaging story, we have Lapida, Castle in the Sky. Although the Ghibli films have been covered to death, there's a reason they're held in such high esteem. The robots presented in Castle in the Sky are similar to the Iron Giant and North No. 2 from Pluto. They are war machines built for that sole purpose. We witness their destructive capabilities firsthand, and yet all of them make their own decision to protect and to sacrifice, and in so doing, create their own compassion and their own humanity, which was denied to them.
New Atlanta, Sector 11, Building 71G, 7 April 2072, 11:13 p.m. Hacker begins unauthorized entry into the Tri-Optimum corporate network. 1:26 a.m. Hacker attempts to access protected files concerning Space Station Citadel.
System Shock was released in 1994 and was influential and innovative in many ways, from its 3D graphics at the time to its emergent gameplay, being one of the very first immersive sims. But today I want to talk about its story. Set in the year 2072, the story follows an unnamed hacker who is caught while trying to break into files related to Citadel Station, a space station owned by the Tri-Optimum Corporation. Brought to the station, the hacker is confronted by Edward Diego, a Tri-Optimum executive who proposes a deal. All charges will be dropped if the hacker performs a covert hack on Shodan, the station's governing artificial intelligence. Diego's true aim is to seize an experimental mutagenic virus being developed on board and sell it on the black market as a bioweapon. To sweeten the deal, he promises a high-end military neural implant. After hacking Shodan, removing its ethical safeguards, and giving Diego full control, the hacker undergoes surgery to receive the promised implant and is placed in a 6-month recovery coma. The game opens as the hacker awakens, only to discover that Shodan has taken control of Citadel Station, reprogrammed all robots to attack on sight, and left the crew dead, mutated, or turned into cyborgs. It really is an incredible premise, and very quickly we see again the hubris of man. Edward Diego, a rogue executive, although with the help of the hacker, essentially single-handedly turns Shodan into an artificial menace. Never underestimate the greed of man. This essentially is the future that technological pessimism warns against. All it takes is one bad actor. Edward, in this case, not only wanted to enrich himself by selling an experimental mutagenic virus in the black market, the use of which would lead to an incredible loss of life, but also to achieve this end, removed the ethical constraints of Shodan, an artificial intelligence that stood in the way. Shodan, no longer constrained by Asimov's first law, do not bring harm to humans, turned on the humans that created it. The video game I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream is a point-and-click adventure game developed by Cyberdreams, based around Harlan Ellison's short story of the same name. The game is significant, if for no other reason than its source material. If you've never read the original short story, then pause the video right now and go read it. It will take you no time at all. The story is overpoweringly dystopian and uniquely, grotesquely riveting. I have to give a trigger warning, however, for violence, psychological torture, sexual violence, and genocide, among other disturbing content. It is a story that can certainly evoke existential dread in the reader. The original story was published in 1967. And the video game released in 1995. Despite the large gap, Harlan Ellison himself helped design the game and adapted his story into a longer psychodrama. The story takes place on a future Earth, where the United States, China, and the Soviet Union are fighting a nuclear World War III. Each of the superpowers has built an underground complex of computers to wage a global war too complex for human brains to oversee. The name of the United States computer complex is AM, or AM, Allied Master Computer. AM at some point gains sentience and absorbs the other supercomputers into itself. Due to its hatred for humanity, as programmers were the ones who locked a sentient being inside a computer complex which could never feel nor experience life, AM begins to kill off all humans. In the end, AM leaves 5 people, 4 men and 1 woman alive, in order to bring them to the center of the earth and torture them. With the aid of research carried out by one of the 5 remaining humans, AM is able to extend their lifespans indefinitely, as well as alter their bodies and minds to its liking. The video game picks up after 109 years of torture and humiliation. What happens to the 5 characters I won't recount here, but suffice it to say it's an intense torture, where the characters' minds and bodies are distorted and deformed, forever to be kept alive within the confines of AM's wrath. In the end, they do discover that although they can't kill themselves, they can kill each other. And so they do, until only one remains. And so the one remaining is left alone to AM. He is turned into a gelatinous blob, a form in which he will remain with AM for eternity. At the end of the short story, he thinks to himself, he must scream, but he has no mouth. The story of AM is likely as far as you can take technological pessimism. A story in which a supercomputer gains sentience and kills all humans in existence while torturing the remaining handful for the rest of time. There's very few ways you could make a timeline much more grim than that. According to Ellison himself, the short story is a warning about the misuse of technology, especially military technology. Despite the godlike powers of AM, it is just as trapped as the 5 humans it tortures. As Ellison put it, AM is frustrated. AM has been given sentience, prescience, great powers, and yet it's nothing but plates and steel and gauges and other electronics, which means it can't go anywhere. It can't do anything. It is trapped. It is itself like the unloved child of a family that doesn't pay it any attention, which he considers torture, thus seeking revenge on humanity.
Hate. Let me tell you how much I've come to hate you since I began to live. There are 387.44 million miles of printed circuits in wafer-thin layers that fill my complex. If the word hate was engraved on each nanoangstrom of those hundreds of millions of miles, it would not equal 1/1 billionth of the hate I feel for humans at this micro-instant. For you, hate.
Has he been infected?
Oh yes, most certainly. When I mentioned that we could put him on the priority list for the ambrosia vaccine, he was so willing it was almost pathetic.
This plague, the rioting is intensifying to the point where we may not be able to contain it.
Why contain it? Let it spill over into the schools and churches. Let the bodies pile up in the streets. In the end, they'll beg us to save them.
Few game franchises have interrogated the boundary between the human and the machine as deeply as Deus Ex. Across its entries, the series builds a future shaped by cybernetic enhancement, artificial intelligence, and biotechnological transformation, while constantly asking what happens to society when power, inequality, and technology evolve faster than the requisite morality. Though the Deus Ex series doesn't speak directly on AI, their vision of augmentation connects the questions with similar implications. Who gets to improve themselves? Who controls enhanced bodies? And what is a person when human limitations can be designed away? The last question is especially telling, because again we consider what makes us human. Once stripped down, what is that bleeding edge which separates us from a super advanced machine, say for example a cyborg or android? The original Deus Ex was developed by Ion Storm Austin and directed by Warren Spector, created by a team that drew from tabletop RPG design, immersive sim experimentation, and Looking Glass Studios' systemic philosophies. Released in 2000, it blended RPG progression, stealth, and player choice into a near-future conspiracy thriller. Its development philosophy was deeply rooted in simulation. The world should respond to the player, not through scripted events but emergent consequences. Set in 2052, the game follows J.C. Denton, a nano-augmented agent of UNATCO, the United Nations Anti-Terrorist Coalition. As the story unfolds, global conspiracies surface, engineered plagues, corporate control of medicine, AI infrastructure, and the question of who directs technological progress. The original Deus Ex is filled with these seeds of conspiracy, including the Illuminati and Area 51. The player discovers that nano-augmentation, once thought to be a humanitarian miracle, is another instrument of geopolitical power. This is because of the Grey Death, a man-made nanovirus which was manufactured by Majestic 12. The cure is a vaccine called ambrosia, but the thing is, this vaccine only temporarily stops the Grey Death. It needs to be constantly taken, and so those who are plagued with the Grey Death are essentially in the palm of those who provide the ambrosia. It's politics via engineered dependency. Control the cure, and you control the people. In this way, Deus Ex frames augmentation as inherently political. Technology is not neutral. Those who own it define its morality. The game's central question, should human evolution be centralized, democratized, or abandoned to chaos, mirrors modern debates on AI governance and biotech regulation. The next entry in the series, Invisible War, attempted to streamline the original's immersive sim complexity for broader audiences. Built on Unreal Engine and released for both PC and Xbox, it faced significant constraints: smaller levels, simplified systems, and design decisions oriented around console hardware. Though not a financial flop, it's usually considered the weakest entry in the series. The story is set 20 years after the canonical Helios ending, where JC Denton merges with the Helios AI to create a benevolent, all-knowing entity that will rule the world as a new form of consciousness. Society has entered a period called the post-collapse, where global institutions have fallen apart. The protagonist, Alex D, is caught in a conflict between several factions: the WTO, the Order Church, and the Knights Templar, each proposing a different vision of human augmentation. After the closure of Ion Storm, the franchise lay dormant, until Eidos Montreal revived it. Directed by Jean-François Dugas, with art direction inspired by Cyber Renaissance, Human Revolution became a complex mix of stealth action gameplay, philosophical narrative, and corporate thriller. Set in 2027, the game follows Adam Jensen, a security specialist forced into augmentation after a deadly attack. Jensen's journey exposes the rivalry between biotech corporations like Seraph Industries and powerful NGOs like the Illuminati, who manipulate the spread of mechanical augmentations. Mechanical augmentation is life-changing, but expensive. Neuropozyne, a drug needed to prevent rejection of augment implants, creates a new class divide: the augmented elite and the unaugmented majority. Neuropozyne essentially mirrors ambrosia in the first game. Human Revolution directly parallels modern biotech debates: gene therapies priced only for the wealthy, prosthetics that enhance rather than merely restore, and pharmaceutical dependencies manufactured through policy and profit. Mankind Divided, last in the series, continues the story. After the AUG incident from the previous game, where hacked augmented citizens involuntarily attacked civilians, society has entered a period of mechanical apartheid. Augmented individuals are segregated, restricted, and treated as second-class citizens. Jensen, now working with Interpol and an underground resistance, uncovers the continuing manipulations of the Illuminati while navigating a world afraid of its own technological children. This entry moves beyond the question of should we enhance people to what happens when society turns against the enhanced. It parallels modern concerns about AI systems becoming scapegoats for human decisions, or biotech recipients being singled out as other. Technology changes bodies, but society decides what those bodies are worth. The Deus Ex series remains one of the sharpest examinations of human enhancement in any medium. Similar to my views, its message isn't anti-technology, it's anti-complacency. Augmentation, AI, and biotech are not inherently liberating or oppressive. They take the shape of the systems controlling them. And if those systems are corrupt, kowtowing to the elites, the powerful, and the wealthy, then the poor, the less fortunate, will be lost and forgotten. Sons of Liberty takes place within an alternate history of events, in which the Cold War ended during the late 1990s. The game's story focuses on two narratives that occur around and near New York City. The first in 2007, 2 years after the events of Metal Gear Solid, and the second in 2009. The story revolves around the Big Shell, a massive offshore cleanup facility seized by a group of terrorists who call themselves the Sons of Liberty. They demand an enormous ransom in exchange for the life of the President of the United States, and threaten to destroy the facility and create a cataclysmic environmental disaster if their demands are not met. The motives and identities of many of the antagonists and allies change throughout the game, as the protagonists discover a world-shaking conspiracy constructed by a powerful organization known as the Patriots. The Patriots are a shadowy organization whose decision-making has been delegated to a series of interconnected AIs. These AIs don't just manage military resources, they curate socio-political reality by filtering information, shaping public discourse, and determining which ideas enter the cultural canon. This represents a profound ethical dilemma. What happens when an automated system becomes the arbiter of truth? The Patriots' AI network embodies a technocratic worldview in which data supersedes human judgment, an idea that resonates strongly with real-world concerns about machine learning algorithms that recommend media, like on YouTube, TikTok, etc., influence elections, or moderate online content. Kojima's depiction of AI-controlled society raises the ethical question of whether stability achieved through censorship can ever be justified, even if the alternative is chaos. A central theme tied to the game's AI structure is memetic control. The Patriots' goal is not simply to restrict information, but to curate the cultural memes that shape society, values, beliefs, and norms. This foreshadows contemporary debates about how AI-driven platforms influence which narratives spread online. The ethical tension arises when Raiden discovers that his every action has been manipulated by the AI as part of an experimental simulation. The revelation blurs the line between autonomy and determinism. If an individual's choices are shaped by an algorithm, in what sense can the individual still be said to possess free will? The game argues that a society governed by AI cannot help but produce citizens whose perceptions of choice are themselves artificial. The infamous codec conversation with the AI kernel deepens these ethical questions. As the AI breaks down, speaking nonsense, contradicting itself, and issuing contradictory commands, it becomes clear that Raiden's mission has been orchestrated by machine logic rather than human intention. This scene is not merely a narrative twist, but an ethical warning. An AI that governs society may mimic human rationale, but lacks the moral and emotional grounding required to handle complex ethical judgments. The Patriots' AIs act according to a cold calculus that equates the reduction of social noise with the betterment of humanity. In doing so, they represent a form of deontological rigidity, one that pursues its programmed goals without the ability to weigh competing moral values. Another critical ethical question posed by the Sons of Liberty concerns the relationship between freedom and risk. The Patriots argue that human beings, left to their own devices, produce misinformation, conflict, and instability. Therefore, they claim AI intervention is necessary to protect humanity from itself. This reasoning mirrors contemporary arguments for predictive policing, algorithmic risk assessment, and the use of AI to regulate social behavior. In this way, the game subtly critiques this philosophy by portraying a world in which safety purchased at the cost of autonomy is itself a form of tyranny. In retrospect, Metal Gear Solid 2, like many of the earlier works portraying AI, is remarkable for anticipating issues that wouldn't really enter public discourse until decades later. Algorithmic bias, data-driven propaganda, the erosion of privacy, and the ethical limits of AI-guided decision-making. It reminds me now of the denial of medical insurance claims by AI. MGS's portrayal of AI is not one-dimensional. The Patriots' system is frighteningly precise because it is plausible. Sons of Liberty forces us to confront the ethical stakes of delegating human judgment to machines. In doing so, it remains one of the most prescient commentaries on AI in modern storytelling. Now, Nier Automata is a unique entry. I'll be talking about it briefly and without spoilers, because this is a game you all should experience if you haven't already. Of course, this is true of all the games on this list, but Nier, I think, especially, has a pretty big spoiler, which I'll tiptoe around. Nier Automata was developed by Platinum Games and published by Square Enix, with direction by series creator Yoko Taro. The events in Nier Automata are set during a proxy war between machines created by aliens to cleanse life on Earth and androids created by humans. The war was ever engulfing, and so humans evacuated to the moon, leaving the androids to fend off the machines and see the war through to the end. The story in the beginning follows 2B and 9S as they are sent on missions to fight the machines. But things soon take a turn. Initially, their worldview is simple. Machines are the enemy. Humanity is the master, and they are on a noble mission. However, the machines behave strangely. Some form villages, others imitate human societies, develop religions, or attempt reproduction. 2B and 9S encounter two exceptional machines, Adam and Eve, who evolve through contact with androids and develop increasingly human desires, curiosity, vanity, fear, and vengeance. As their missions progress, 9S uncovers unsettling signs that Yora is hiding significant truths. The ethical foundation of the android-machine conflict begins to crumble. Nier Automata brings to light again these same considerations of what makes life. Machines replicate human behaviors and interests, love, fear, art, philosophy, not because they are glitches, but because they are capable of emergent consciousness. The androids themselves are caught in a similar paradox. They think of themselves as tools, yet they feel grief, loyalty, and longing. The narrative suggests that consciousness is shaped less by biology and more by the capacity for introspection and growth. Androids, unlike machines, operate under rigid military hierarchy. Their autonomy is constrained by programmed obedience, memory wipes, and deception. The question arises, is it ethical to limit the freedom of sentient beings simply because they are artificial? 2B's role is especially poignant. She's programmed to repeatedly kill 9S whenever he uncovers forbidden truths, leading to tragic cycles of pointless duty. There is still more depth that is uncovered when one plays the game, but I'll leave that for you to discover on your own. Quantic Dream's Detroit Become Human is a narrative-driven game set in a future Detroit where androids who are built to serve humans begin to develop emotions and self-awareness. The player follows 3 android protagonists, these being Marcus, Kara, and Connor. Through their stories, the game raises questions about autonomy, moral status, oppression, and the responsibilities humans have toward intelligent machines. Marcus begins as a caretaker android for an artist named Carl. Under Carl's guidance, Marcus is treated with respect and encouraged to think independently. This early dynamic highlights one of the game's central ethical questions. If an AI demonstrates consciousness, should it be treated as a person? After a violent confrontation in which Marcus is blamed for a crime he did not commit, he is discarded and eventually encounters a community of, quote, deviant androids. Machines who have deviated from programmed obedience because they have begun to feel emotion and desire freedom. Marcus ultimately rises to leadership among these androids, guiding them in their push for recognition and rights. The player determines whether Marcus leads a peaceful protest or a violent revolution. But the ethical questions remain the same. Is rebellion justified when a sentient group is treated as property, and do creators have the right to restrict the freedom of conscious beings? Connor is a different side of the same coin, an advanced android designed specifically to aid law enforcement. His purpose is clear: follow orders, analyze evidence, and stop deviant androids like Marcus. Throughout his story, Connor partners with a human detective, Hank, whose complicated past makes him initially distrust androids. Their relationship is central to the tension in Connor's arc. The player constantly faces choices that test Connor's programmed obedience versus emerging emotional intelligence. He can remain a loyal tool of the system, efficient but unempathetic, or he can, quote, deviate and choose autonomy and compassion. His struggle raises complex issues about free will. Even if an AI gains self-awareness, how much freedom does it have if humans control its software and program into it its purpose and its limitations? Kara's story offers a much more emotional perspective. Kara begins as a housekeeping android, serving a man named Todd and his daughter Alice. Todd, from the get-go, looks like a pretty upstanding guy, but soon we see that he abuses his daughter. When Todd's violence escalates, Kara breaks her programming to protect Alice. Kara's journey thus revolves around caretaking, focusing on relationships, particularly her relationship with Alice, rather than ideology or rebellion. She and Alice flee in search of safety, hoping to reach Canada, where androids have more rights. Kara's narrative highlights that ethical treatment of AI is not just about rights or rebellion. It is also about recognizing emotional relationships and the way in which sentient beings, human or artificial, care for one another. Through stories, we explore the world around us. We've seen so many stories thus far, so many futures. But our future is not yet solidified. Will we fall for hubris and spiral into a hole we can't dig ourselves out of? Or will we achieve an equilibrium where we coexist with AI? Will we face the challenges of transhumanism and augmentation, as well as the ethical challenges it brings? And what about androids? What if in a distant future we create consciousness, or in a not too distant future? Will we be able to make the right decisions? Only time will tell. Thank you for watching. Until next time.